Hi, welcome to Parenting and Teaching with Richie Huffman. I'm Richie Huffman, President and CEO of Celebrate Preschools. On these podcasts, we'll be talking to real parents, teachers about what's going on at home, in the classroom, and everything in between. I hope you find these conversations informative, helpful, sometimes funny, and sometimes serious. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back. I'm Richie.
And I'm Allie.
And today we are discussing switching careers to early childhood education. And we are joined today by Stefanie Shurer. And she actually is the head of training and developing for Celebrate. So welcome, Steph.
Thanks. Super excited to be here.
Hi. So, Steph, I'm still pretty new at Celebrate, so I'm curious, and for our listeners, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us where you're from, what do you do, where do you currently live?
Sure. So I'm native to Maryland. I currently live in Fallston, which is in Harford County. Actually, on Saturday, getting ready to celebrate my 11th year wedding anniversary with my husband.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I have 3 children. My oldest, Caleb, is 7.5. My middle son, Zachary, is 6. And my youngest, Annabelle, is 3.
And were they Celebrate kids?
All 3 of them since about 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, so my 2 oldest ones are in elementary school, so they're in the school age room, and then Annabelle's in the preschool program.
Oh, fantastic. Mm-hmm. Do you have pets then too, in addition to those?
We do.
3?
Yes, we do. We have 2 cats that are named after Capitals ice hockey players because my husband and I are huge Caps fans. So we have TJ and we have Nikki. And then we just got a puppy about 2 weeks ago, and so we named him Stanley because the Caps just won the Stanley Cup.
Oh,
so
yeah, I was going to say, just a really exciting year for you in ice hockey world then.
I had a chance to meet Stanley the other day when Steph brought her family to a horse show that I was at. So Stanley's actually a really, really good puppy. I mean, he was
What kind of dog is he?
He's a Bernedoodle, so he's a Bernese Mountain Dog mixed with a poodle, and he's super sweet.
Big and fluffy then, right?
He is, but he doesn't shed. He's hyperallergenic, and he is super sweet and very calm for a puppy.
You wouldn't even know he was a puppy. I mean, he's a really, really good little dog. So.
I'm going to count down the days till bring your dog to work day so I can So where did you go to school then? Where are native to Maryland? Have you stayed in Maryland? You went to college in Maryland?
I did. So surprisingly, when I was in high school, I actually wanted to go into engineering. So I actually had gotten a full ride to Virginia Tech for mechanical engineering. And I had some personal things happening with my family at home, so I decided I wanted to stay close to home. And so I actually went to UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County in Catonsville, instead with not a full ride. But I still started with mechanical engineering. That's where I actually met my husband. And we actually didn't date for the first couple of years. We were just friends. And we took a bunch of classes together. After about 3 years in engineering, I kind of decided that might not have been the place for me. And that's kind of where the whole change happened.
What made you think that?
Same thing, yeah. Right outside of high school too, right?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I did a lot of computer programming, and I did a lot with engineering and working on bridges and things like that. And I actually did enjoy that. I'm the tinkerer. I like to do like Legos and stuff like that, kinetics and stuff. But all of my extracurricular activities, because they want you to have all of those going into college, had to do with kids. I was participating with our youth group at church, did some different like youth events. I also participated with a camp for abuse and neglect children during the summertime. I did a lot of nannying and babysitting and things like that. And I guess it really hit home when I was in my second year of college, and one of my friends said, hey, I'm working at a childcare center. They need some help from 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning. Do you want to work a couple hours? Because I'm a morning person. I
Before
said, sure.
school?
Right, before I had my classes.
Cool.
I'm like, that's fine, no problem. And then I had to reevaluate do I really want to build stuff, or do I want to spend my time teaching kids and having fun with kids? And that's where my whole kind of transition started to happen at that point.
Wow.
So.
What was your first job then? That was your kind of 2-hour mornings, but did you go through college then, or did you start doing that more often? How did you transition?
So I actually worked for a construction company in college. So I helped remodel houses down in Montgomery County in DC.
So cool.
Tool belt and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I did that for a little bit of time as well, and then worked at that, like I said, a childcare center for about 2 hours in the mornings. And then I also, my second year of college became what's called an MA. So everyone's familiar with RAs, resident assistants, things like that. An MA is a maintenance assistant. So it's a college student that actually comes and fixes stuff on the dorms. So changes your filters, changes light bulbs, fixes your toilet.
You were doing that?
I did. So they pay for my room and board. Yeah. So they pay my room and board, which is really great.
Yeah, it's a great trade.
For that time. And I started that. And then that's when I decided I wanted to switch into early childhood. Well, I wanted to switch into teaching. And I remembered what it was like being in middle school when I was like, like hormones and all that stuff. And I was like, middle school was not a good time frame. So I decided I either needed to go, high school, or I wanted to go really, really young with the little guys. And I remember when I went home to my parents and I said, because I used to go home on the weekends because I am from Howard County. So it was only about a 30-minute drive. So we would go home on the weekends, do laundry, mooch off the parents, the food and stuff.
Take the Costco trips. That's what I used to do.
And I said to my parents, I said, so I think I want to change my career to teaching. And my mom had gone to school for teaching, but then just there weren't any teaching positions. So she went into telecommunications, worked for AT&T and that kind of thing. I thought she was going to be supportive. Like, yes, go for it. And my dad worked for B&G. And my mom goes, well, you better find like a sugar daddy because you're not going to make any money.
That's where I was headed, right? Like that was going to be my next question. Like
my dad, of course, supported. He was like, go for it. Do whatever makes you happy, right? Because I could just blink my eyes at my dad and he would just bend over backwards.
But you're at that crossroad, right? You're on this track. I can only imagine as a parent, right? You're on this. I got my daughter. She's on this track. She's going to Virginia Tech to be an engineer. Great career, probably big money, and total right turn. Teacher.
Right.
Yeah. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like that thought process.
So, I guess because of all the different things that I did, all the different service projects, at that point, after my second year of college, I went on a mission trip with the church to Honduras for 2 weeks. And so I think it really changed my perspective of, do I want to do something that, yes, I may enjoy, yes, I may make a lot of money in it, or do I want to do something where it's more giving back to the community? And I think I found myself more of, I want to be able to give back.
Wow.
So.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, and Allie, you could speak to this as being a former teacher. I mean, I think a lot of teachers go through that thought process.
Yeah, I think you have those moments where you really realize that the whole reason you do it is for the kids, because that's what makes your heart feel good. So if you're not getting that, and you were still so young in college making that decision and that realization that maybe wasn't the route that you needed to go to. So I think you realize that it's such a good time, because I remember being 17 when your parents say, what do you want to be? And we ask our kids when they're 3 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like such a common question asked in our society. And I think it was so hard for me, at least as a 17-year-old kid who just really didn't know. And so to realize it and have that moment like you had in Honduras, or those moments you had with those kids at the daycare, I think it's a really beautiful thing that you can pick up on that and run with it from there.
It's so funny you said that. I had a conversation yesterday, and that we had this exact same conversation around, it's so unfair to ask our kids, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a better question is, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Right? Not what do you want to be? Because as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, even my children today at 12, and even my oldest at 17, I'll still find myself asking that question, what do you want to be? It's such the wrong question.
Yeah.
They have no idea what they want to be. But
yeah, and it also puts doesn't stigmatize, but it puts this idea that kids are supposed to say the things that they're familiar with. So they're supposed to say teacher and firefighter and astronaut and these things, but it doesn't have a whole lot of background, or they don't have the knowledge to even know what types of things could lead them to different places in life. So.
Or I also think that they'll name somebody that's maybe doing something that's their role model, right? Like if your dad's an engineer, I want to be like that. I want to be an engineer.
Right. Which that's so sweet to hear as a kid, and you want your kids to enjoy the things you do as well, I'm sure.
And look at you as a role model, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they want.
Yeah, I try so hard not to ask kids that question, but it's hard.
My oldest son, Caleb, like I said, he's 7.5, so he's going into second grade. If you ask him at any point in time, and he has probably said this since he's been like 4, he wants to be an Army Ranger, police officer, firefighter, race car driver. And I'm
he
like,
says all of that in a row.
Yes. And so we've had the conversation about how you could kind of be 3 of them. Like you can be a volunteer firefighter, because that's not all the time. You could be an Army Ranger, and they also have military police. So you could be part of the military police and an Army Ranger. And I'm like, I'm not quite sure how you're going to get into the race car, if that's like
it's on the weekends
kind of thing while you're firefighting. But if that, I'm like, you're not going to ever sleep. So Godspeed.
Let's choose.
Yes.
That's cute.
So, yeah.
So take us through a little bit of kind of where you are now. Like you had this Honduras trip and you've been working with kids through college and you kind of made that switch going into your third year, but how have you made it since then? You finished college then with an education degree, or how did that work out?
So actually it didn't. So at UMBC, they do not have education as a major in your undergrad.
Okay.
They kind of want you to be, I think, well-rounded. So they want you to major in something else, and then you take all of your education classes. And then to be a teacher in the public schools, you have to take the praxis exams, kind of like your certification. And so by the time I was in my third year of college, I had all of these credits that not really a lot of them amounted to education.
They didn't transfer, right?
Correct. So I had to look at everything and go, okay, what's the shortest degree? What classes can I take to get out, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, real quick? And it was sociology. So sociology is the study of groups of people. And so there's only 10 classes for sociology for you to be able to take and graduate. And I'm like, okay, let's just do it. I'll take them, get them out of the way. And I'm one of those individuals that I could be a perpetual student. I loved learning, so it didn't matter what I was taking my classes on. And then after my first 2 classes, I fell in love with sociology. I was taking classes about American Indians. I was taking classes about education and public policy, about groups of people throughout history, things like that. And after my first semester, one of my professors came over to me and said, "Have you thought about the combined undergraduate-graduate program?" And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about. My focus was really education, but get the sociology classes out of the way." And so at UMBC, and I think many colleges have this now, where you can take classes while you're an undergraduate that will also count, you double down. It counts for your graduate degree as well. And you can graduate with your undergraduate, and then you only have to take 1 year to finish your master's degree.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And so I did that, just thinking like, hey, might look better off when I go to do my when I come out of school with my master's. And when I worked with my advisor, I was able to take a lot of sociology classes that would really help me with education. So I took a lot of public policy classes. I took a lot of classes that really kind of fell into the realm of policy and education and that kind of thing. And I did my master's thesis on autism in children, because that was my passion, was children with disabilities and disorder. So I was able to graduate with my undergraduate in sociology. A year later, I graduated with my master's in applied sociology, and I came out of school with having my praxis completed, so I was able to go right into the teaching field. So my actual degree is not in education at all.
Or engineering.
But I do have a math minor. Differential equations. I'm your woman. 2 + 2 does not equal 4 in math anymore. So, yeah.
So then you landed at Celebree? Then?
No,
Is that where did you transition to?
So my husband ended up getting his job up in Aberdeen and Hartford County, working for Frito-Lay, the chip company. And so I started interviewing around at different school systems. Baltimore County offered me an open contract, which is, they offer me a contract. I can be a teacher, but I don't have a set location. They could put me in any school in Baltimore County, and I was not okay with that, not knowing where I was going to be living and commuting. So I kind of said no to that. Hartford County offered me a position with their schools there. So I ended up teaching at a school in Hartford County and called William Paykel Post Road over in Abingdon area.
Exactly where it is.
So I taught there for a couple of years. I taught kindergarten and 3rd grade. And after a couple of years being there, I will say that unfortunately it was not necessarily a place for me coming right out of school, being what I would refer to myself as a green teacher. I was not prepared, because that school at the time was considered a Title I school. So I was not prepared for all of the additional components that came along with being a Title I school teacher. I just didn't feel prepared for that. And so I left, and I left because I was coming home very emotional at the end of the day. I felt like I was not being successful. I felt like I wasn't helping the children, because there's only so much that you can teach them when their tummies are hungry. When they're coming to school and, I get excited that they have on clothes and shoes for the day. I'm not worried that they don't have a pencil in their backpack, or that they don't even have a backpack. Like, you are here today. I'm excited that you're here.
Right.
So it was a very mental and emotional toll on me. And so my husband actually looked at me and said, "I can't have you coming home like this every day. Like, this is not okay for you." So where I lived in Hartford County, a Celebree was a mile and a half from my house, and I had seen it going by. It's in Rock Springs, so I was going by, going to the CVS, going to the Giant. And I was like, you know what? I remember what it was like to work at a daycare before. I loved working with the little guys. I'll just go throw my application in. So I went in, I dropped off my application. I'm driving home. By the time I got home, my husband said, Celebree called for you. They want to set up an interview for you. I'm going, it was like 2 minutes.
Right.
It took me 2 minutes to drive home, and they had already, called me in. So I came in and interviewed, and thankfully they, gave me the opportunity to be a teacher. I started out as actually a part-time teacher because I was in the mindset of I needed to have that 9 to 5, come in, love on the babies, and go home because I needed to have that space from what it was like to be a salaried teacher at that point.
What program did they put you in?
So I was what's called an infant toddler breaker preschool closer.
Got it.
So I came in at about noon, and I covered the breaks for the infant and toddler teachers, so they could go on their lunch breaks. And then from 3 to 6:30, because I was preschool certified, I was the closing teacher in the preschool program. That's kind of what my shift was for the first couple months. So that was during the summertime because I finished out the school year with the public schools. And then the enrollment picked up at the center at that point. And so when the fall happened, I opened up the preschool B, or the 4-year-old classroom that hadn't been open before.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
How long were you there for then?
So I was at that center for about a year and a half. And then I was promoted to being the assistant director at the Forest Hill location, so just down the road from there. And I was there for roughly about 2 years. I had both of my boys at that time over at that school. And I had one of those other, again, transitional moments where I was at home with my second son on maternity leave, and I was realizing that I didn't like being an assistant director at that time. I don't know if it was I wasn't fully prepared for it or if it just wasn't for me. But I felt like I was being a boss, and I didn't want to be a boss. I wanted to be a leader. I didn't feel like I was being a leader at that time. So we had the discussion of maybe I come back as a teacher instead of being in that administrative type role. Because in the role that I was in, I was doing a lot more of the operational day-to-day things, billings and things like that. And that wasn't why I went into education. It wasn't why I wanted to work with the children. So I came back as a teacher, and I actually wanted to stay at that center. I was given the opportunity of going to a different center so that I didn't feel like it was a demotion and that kind of thing. And I said, no, my children are at this center. I'm used to being with those parents, those family members, the teachers. I'm okay with them being my peers now. Like, I just want to stay. So again, Celebrate was wonderful enough to be able to give me that opportunity to come back and stay and work in the classrooms there.
Wow, that's really cool that you did that.
Yeah, but you were also, smart enough to figure out, like, this is not where my passion is, and this is not where I get my fulfillment. Whether it's going back to the engineering or as you've moved through your career, like you're constantly chasing, what fills you and what motivates you.
Yeah, I think that says so much about you that you can make that decision and just go for it. Because I think people are really scared to do that in life with careers or.
Are you speaking for yourself?
Myself a little bit, maybe. No, but I just went through it, so I know it's scary. 100%. It's scary to go through change, but you hear that all the time from people that change is terrifying sometimes. Yeah. But I think you've done it so many times, and you're successful at what you do. So I think it's really cool that you've had the ability to do that for yourself.
I think that's the other important part is that you have to do something where you feel like you're going to be successful. And I did not necessarily feel like I was being successful, which also meant that my team might not be successful at that point. So why am I going to drag myself down or drag the team down at that point? Because I was overseeing 10, 15, 20 teachers and 100 children and all those families as well. So, sometimes it's about you, but you also have to look at the big picture of what you're doing to influence others at that point too.
Yeah. Right. Well, congrats on that. So where are you now?
So again, Celebrate gave me another opportunity wherein I said, I love being a teacher, but I also feel like I could do more for Celebrate with other teachers. We had center mentors. So at the time, I was the person that teachers would come to when they had any questions about anything licensing related or a curriculum question or just any general, I have a question about Celebrate or being a teacher question, which I loved doing, but I felt like maybe I could do that for more than just the teachers in my building. And so a position opened up for a training coordinator to have a orientation for all new teachers that were coming on board with the company. So I threw my hat in the ring and said, let me interview, which was a grueling interview, by the way. I'm sure you remember that one. We had to interview with a district director or Lisa Bricker, the head of HR, or Lisa Hinkle. And so we went through individual interviews with that. And then after that, it was a panel interview which was probably one of the most terrifying things in my entire life.
More terrifying than this podcast.
When you have the owner of the company and you have the district directors and you have the head of the curriculum and you have the head of HR and you have the VP of operations all sitting there looking at you, 6, 7 people, and you have to present for about 15 minutes about what kind of your content will be or what you would do as a training coordinator for those new teachers. And then it's the panel interview where then they ask you lots of questions.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
Yeah, but
Wow.
what did that prove to you?
I guess it proved to me that you always have to try something. I mean, I think that even if I hadn't been successful and had been offered the position, it would not have turned me down from trying something else. And I also would not have honestly left Celebrity because Celebrity has given me the opportunity to move within, being here. I mean, in May, I celebrated my 9-year anniversary of Celebrity. And I will tell you that when I first came on board with Celebrity, I had not thought that I thought this was more of a stepping stone. I was probably going to go back into the public schools. And I can tell you that I have no aspirations to go back into the public schools at this point. So, it definitely changed my mindset in a lot of different areas.
So thread that a little bit more for me, right? Because the topic is, career change into early education. So thread that a little bit more for me of someone that may be considering getting out of their current career and getting into early education.
Sure. And mine is a very different role too, because most people go from early childhood, meaning a learning center or a daycare, and they go into the public schools.
True.
Whereas mine was the complete opposite again,
That's
where
true.
I went from the public schools into, the early education field.
But we are starting to see that trend.
Yes.
We are starting to see school teachers get out of that environment.
And I think there's a lot of pieces that go along with that. There's a lot of, we don't want to say it, but there is a lot of teaching to the test. You're trying to get the children prepared so that they pass all those different exams or those assessments so that, the school is a blue ribbon school or they are no longer, on one list or another. And so we are not able, in the early childhood field, we do it because we want to spend time with those little ones and we want to be able to learn through play because that's how children learn. They learn through play. And we feel like the time that we get to spend outside on the playground or the time that we get to have in centers or interest areas, that keeps getting taken away more and more because we have to sit at our desks and we have to do word work or we have to sit and we have to do math. And so I think that's why a lot of teachers are coming back out of that because they want to be able to come back and have their own ideas and do a lot of more of those fun activities that are still educational and learning based. My husband also is kind of switching, looking at doing slightly things differently. I mentioned that he started at Frito-Lay, which is the chip company. 2 years ago, he switched over to Pepsi, which is their owning company. So everyone knows about Pepsis and sodas and stuff. But he's still kind of gone the line of working in the maintenance department because he was an engineer, but he's actually looking at switching to doing something else. And he interviewed just the other day for a finance position. Now he knows numbers, but sitting there and doing accounting wasn't really his thing until his most current role in doing what he's doing at Pepsi, because he now has all of the control over ordering all of the parts, placing any of those orders. He had some other really big projects to help the facility run differently. And so he had multi-million-dollar contracts that he was working on, which was something very different from his scope of making sure that, pieces fit together and they run,
Right.
Conveyor belts keep going.
Right.
So, he's looking at a slightly different shift too, now within the same company, but a slightly different shift for what was
And I
the
think
normal
that's
for
what
him.
people are scared of. I think at least I think when you make a big shift like that, you think, well, I don't have experience in this and I don't have the knowledge of this to be successful. But once you do it, I feel like you have these light bulbs go off all the time of, oh, that's what teaching did for me, or that's what being in the maintenance department did for me. I knew numbers there, but now look what I can do here. And I think if you have the courage to know that you can handle things like that and know that your experiences are valuable for your future jobs and careers and changes that you do, you'll be successful.
Yeah, I talk with teachers all the time when I'm in training or when I get the opportunity to go out and actually mentor in the buildings to support them with maybe classroom management or curriculum. And I really have the conversation of, and everyone's heard this before, skill or will. I am all about the will. If you don't have the skill right now, I can teach you the skill. I can teach you how to get excited. I can teach you how to lesson plan. I can teach you how to do a portfolio. What I can't teach you is to be excited to come to work every day.
The passion.
Right.
Commitment.
Right. Is that will there? You might not have that skill yet. You might not, Allie, you just said this is a whole new thing for you. You might not have really known what it meant to be an event, do all the events and things like that. But as long as you come into work every day, asking those questions, getting people to support you and being excited to do it, all those other skills and things are going to come with it.
Yeah.
I was also just thinking about, as we interview people to come into our company, a lot of people are asking questions around culture. Like, what is the culture here? So, I'm sure you took that in consideration too, right? Because what I hear is that you made that leap because of what you saw, whether it was through your mission trips or whether through your short stint at the preschool. But there was I like this culture. I like this environment. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the environment in preschools and the culture that we've created here?
Yeah. So another big piece that I liked about coming into the early childhood field kind of away from the public schools was the community involvement or the interaction with families. When you're in the public schools, you call a parent to tell them how a child's day was, but that's kind of the extent of it. You don't necessarily always hear back from them. At the school that I was at, when I had parent-teacher conferences my first year, I had 2 parents out of my entire class show up because it just was not important, I guess. Well, that's me making a judgment. But I don't, maybe I should say, I don't know why the parents didn't show up, but they didn't show up.
But they didn't, right?
Correct. Whereas when I come to Celebrate, I get to see parents twice a day.
Every day.
In the morning and in the afternoon. Exactly. 5 days. If they're full-time, I get to see them 5 days a week. I can still call them on the phone as well and tell them what's going on. When I have conferences, I have all my parents come. And my first year when I was at Celebrate and I wanted to do conferences, I used my training that I learned from conscious discipline of that positive intent and really offering choices to parents I made sure that I had every parent show up. Because to me, it's only 15 minutes. I give 15 minutes to talk to you about all the awesome things that your child is doing. Why wouldn't you want to come and talk to me for 15 minutes? And so if they hadn't signed up, I'd walk over to that sign-in sheet and say, hey, Richie, I see you haven't had a chance to sign up yet. I have 7 o'clock on Tuesday and 6:30 on Wednesday. Which time works best for you? I'll write it down now and send you a reminder. So I didn't really even give them a chance, but it was also helpful because I got to see them every day. Yeah. And then if I did get that pushback, it's, hey, don't you want to know all these really cool things that your child's doing in the classroom, all these awesome things that they're learning? You know what? If it doesn't work for you, let me call you. I'll call you on my lunch break. Yeah. We can have a conversation for 15 minutes on our lunch break. Yeah.
That's such a great point, right? Especially in early education, right? Like you get to see that parent every single day. So that gives you an opportunity to give them feedback and celebrate.
It's all those touch points.
You get to celebrate every single day or at least a few times a week on this child's development. Unlike elementary ed, right? You see them at teacher conferences, or they're going to school on the school bus, or they're getting dropped off, right? That interaction with parents is not there. And as you were speaking, I was like, yeah, man, you really get that opportunity every single day to talk about that child's development and to celebrate that, which is due to a lot to your credit.
Right. Right. I was actually thinking, I was speaking to someone this morning. So yesterday, I was asked by one of the teachers and then the director at the Fallston location where my children go, if I would go on the field trip yesterday for summer camp to Dutch Wonderland, which anytime there's a big field trip where lots of children are going, I am all about going because one, it's fun, but 2, supervision. I want to make sure that every little head is accounted for. And twice yesterday when we were walking around Dutch Wonderland, I had 2 different ladies come over to me with their own kids and said, hey, I want to say, you guys have a really great summer camp. And I said, oh, awesome. What, do your children go to one of our locations? Oh, no. We live in Pennsylvania, but your children have been so polite and so courteous this whole time. And I just had to look at them and say, thank you. Right. Because, it's not just the parents that are teaching the children, but it's us at the centers as well. And, those 2 pieces play a very big part of that child's development. And to be able to hear that they're noticing it from us, whether we're 5 feet away or 10 feet or 20 feet away, I thought was very impactful. Yeah. Yeah. It was very cool.
What could somebody start doing today, Steph, if they were just even listening to this podcast and was like, maybe I should take a look at becoming a preschool teacher or just getting into a high quality preschool? Like
there's so many different things. We're lucky in this day and age that we have all this, social media, that we have the ability to go on the internet and do all these different, Google searches and things like that. So I think, one thing would be to just think about what it is that you're interested in. Like, I talk about this with the teachers about when they're doing things with the children. What are the children's interests? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Same kind of thing for an individual. Like, what are some things that you like doing? What are some things that you don't like doing? Maybe do some different searches online, look at social media, look at maybe some of the things that their friends are doing. Or do they have friends that are teachers or that are educators? Do they have friends that are in the field that they're looking into? Yeah. And then start to probe and ask some of those questions.
Yeah. And I know this, Maryland especially is a big advocate of helping people make that career change. I mean, could you talk us a little bit about, like, I know they will pay for your 4-year degree, they'll pay for your books. I know there's all kinds of grant opportunities out there.
Yeah. So, right now we're unfortunately just across the country. We're honestly in a dry spell when it comes to teachers. There's not a lot of talent pool that is coming into being educators right now. And so one of the big pushes is to see what can we do to draw those educators or those individuals in that do want to teach, but maybe we're just not taking that step into the pool yet. And one of them, Maryland specifically, does do what's called the Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund. And so that's basically a program where, as long as you're working in an early childhood program, that they will pay for your schooling. They pay for books and things like that. You also have to be part of the credentialing program. But the nice thing about the credentialing program as well is that they do provide you with additional funds. So depending on what level,
as a teacher, right?
As a teacher, depending on what level you're at, you can get anywhere from $200 to $1,000 a year for your credential level. They also give you reimbursements for vouchers for taking different trainings and things like that. So there really is a lot of money out there that Maryland kind of sets aside for the teaching field. It's just really up to those individuals to, grab onto it.
Yeah.
And ask the questions.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And they do have it. I should also say that they have it for community colleges and four-year universities. So, a lot of teachers are finding that it's easier for them to go and get their AA in an early childhood field because it's still bringing in a degree into that childcare center.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are awesome incentives.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Yeah.
I just don't think, and hopefully.
It's just taking the time to kind of do some research into it, and then also saying, I'm going to set this time aside to be able to take my class, or, and a lot of them are offering online classes. Online classes are huge right now. If I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, I can sit and watch a webinar or something like that for an hour and then go back to bed, right? I can't necessarily do that in the middle of the day. No one's going to be teaching a class at 1 o'clock in the morning.
and as you said, with the shortage in this field, if you take it upon yourself to reach out and find these opportunities, whether they're grant opportunities, but further your education, you can walk into any preschool with that kind of credentials and instantly get a job.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If this is the field that you choose, and we hope that's the field that they choose.
Absolutely.
So, anything else?
I think we're really lucky to have you today. I think
Yeah.
it opens a
thanks.
lot of doors and ideas, and you had great recommendations for incentives and people who are looking to make this change but maybe don't yet have the push to do it. I think you offered a lot of insight to that. So thank you. So.
Yeah.
And congrats. I mean, I know that takes a lot to go from, wanting to be a, Virginia Tech and being an engineer to, not to be, not that your position here at Celebrys. I know it's been incredible for you, and we're blessed to have you. So thanks, Steph.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us today on Parenting and Teaching with Richie Huffman.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, childhood only comes this way but once.
For more information, head on over to richiehuffman.com.
I'm Richie.
And I'm Allie.
And we look forward to seeing you again on another podcast.